right, happy holidays. We are 4 weeks into this prep now, and I couldn't be more happy with the progress that we've made. And more importantly than the progress, I'm really happy about solidifying my day to day process. So, the last week or two, we've learned some things that, maybe we can get away with for now. And I know I've been having a little bit of trouble, as far as hitting the step count that we have targeted. So what I've decided to do instead to eat on the lower end of the assigned calorie range. And by doing that, I'm still hitting the rate of loss that we're looking for, that pound per week. So what we've learned is about 3,500 steps per day, and on average about 2,000 calories per day. We're getting that pound off per week. And it's a less stressful way right now for me to go about this, trying to force the steps in. There's a lot of my time right now, I just have to devote it to other areas of my life, coaching my athletes, taking care of my son, making sure that my wife is cared for, just being the family man, being present. And, right now, if I'm devoting too much time on contest prep, then in a sense, it takes away from my overall quality of life. And I know it's kind of cool to say that we're this hardcore bodybuilder, we get after it, very rigid, we're intense, we make progress happen. Inspiring to see some of these people doing that. But at the same time, there's other things that to consider too. Basically sacrifice an entire year of your life. Goal of competing can take its toll, and not just on us as bodybuilders, but it can take its toll on those around us. So I really don't want to, again, have areas of my life outside of bodybuilding suffer too much, at least right now anyways. I know there's going to come a time when, maybe for a month out, 2 months, 3 months out from the show, I might have to buckle down a little bit more and become that rigid, hardcore bodybuilder. But to do it this early in the prep just doesn't make sense for me right now. Again, being a dad, being a husband, it's definitely my priorities. So it feels good to solidify that. Now it's definitely easier as we move ahead to assess what's going on. So as long as I'm very consistent with that, which I'm very confident I'm going to be able to do that now because I'm not pressured. I don't feel a lot of stress now. I just know, okay, I get up and I just rinse and repeat what I'm doing. And it's easier to interpret the data that's coming in. And a couple of weeks back, the scale did stall out on us. And, of course, with some people, a little bit of that freak out, right? Like, oh, I'm not progressing. We need to make a change. We need to lower calories down, or we need to do more cardio or more steps. But I didn't let anxiety or stress or any type of, let's say, unguided emotions dictate my decision making. I was like, okay, just be patient. Keep executing, and let's give it a little bit more time, because sometimes the scale will just stay consistent because of, let's say, food source, bowel movements, sodium levels, hydration, stress, etc. There's a bunch of variables there to consider as to maybe why the scale isn't cooperating. So I decided, hey, let's just give this time, just keep executing. And I also felt the deficit, like I felt a little more hunger, felt a little more tired at times. So I knew I was probably in a deficit, even though that scale wasn't cooperating. And sure enough, we got that whoosh that we're kind of looking for. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. But I'm glad that, again, I didn't let any type of emotions dictate my decision making and slash calorie, add a bunch of steps or something like that. So I don't want to be too premature with these things. So I'm glad that I did that, but it feels good again to solidify the day-to-day. So things are smooth sailing right now. And, now it's kind of just boring. Rinse and repeat the process. It's kind of Groundhog Day, get up, hit the macro, just do my day-to-day steps, whatever happens in life, I'm going to get about my 3,500 that I'm kind of averaging and get my training in. The thing about training is now that I'm heading into my 5th week of prep, I'm starting to feel the prep itself a little bit more. Hunger is creeping up a little bit more, and I don't fear hunger, or I don't try to fight it too much, because it takes a lot to fight hunger, like mental energy. Whereas if I just embrace it and just kind of accept the fact that I'm gonna be hungry, and that's actually kind of a good thing as long as it's not like excessive, that it means it's working as far as the deficit. It means like if my body is hungry, it's asking for more food, and I'm not obviously giving it more food. And that means I don't have enough energy. Where is it going to get the energy? Well, it's going to get it from body fat. So that's basically exactly what I want. And when you get the visual changes happening, which I'm starting to notice I am getting leaner. That's a motivating factor. So, when I'm a little bit hungry, I'm like, it's working. Visually, it's working. So it's motivating, keeps me pushing for more. Energy levels, they're okay, but I'm starting to notice a little bit towards the end of last week, labored with training. I actually took an auto-regulated deload on my second upper day, and I went ahead and skipped my second lower day of the week to get an extra recovery day because I was starting to feel a little bit fatigued. And having 3 rest days, having 2 refeeds on the weekend definitely helped to perk me back up, back to normal training this week. And as far as programming is concerned, how many sets per week do I do per body part? What's my frequency? That type of thing. So a lot of my training is auto-regulated. And the reason it's auto-regulated, 35 years of training experience. So that information, my history, is far more valuable than, let's say, what the general recommendations is kind of telling us what we should be doing. You need to actually, run trial and error, really figure out exactly where you need to be. And that's something that I have a pretty good handle on, and that we're getting, deeper into the prep. I know it's only 4 weeks, but we are getting a little bit deeper into it. So it's kind of like getting into a little bit rougher waters. I have to manage my fatigue that much more. What I've noticed prior to prepping was that trying to do squats and deadlifts, no issue at all as far as doing that in the same week. Doing in the same session, that's always really hard for me to do that. Even in the off season, trying to do squats and deadlifts in the same session just doesn't work out too well. But I usually can do squats, deadlifts in the same week, no issues whatsoever. I have good recovery and I can do it. Lately, the last couple of weeks, I'm noticing that it's getting more labored. Now I'm alternating squats and deadlifts. So, for example, this week I did deadlifts yesterday, so I won't do squats this week. In its place, I'll do leg press and hyperextensions with a glute ham focus. So that way, it'll replacing some of that volume I lose off of squats. Leg press is covering my quads. Hyperextensions, I'm getting the glutes, I'm getting the hamstrings. Inevitably, I'm getting lower back as well. So I'm covering my basis there. When I'm not deadlifting, I put the hyperextensions in its place as well. So again, getting the glute, hamstrings touched, lower back gets touched. I don't get the quads with the hyperextension because I do get a little bit of quad work with the hybrid deads that I do. But I'm doing enough leg extensions where, I'm not going to see atrophy. So I'm still hitting my quads. So I have to be mindful now of exercise selection. I know I touched on this with my last video. I kind of touched on the fact that squats, deadlifts, I'm enjoying those movements. I want to keep them in, but I need to alternate those every week. So that's what I've been doing. It seems to be working out pretty well thus far, but I'll have to be mindful as we move ahead, pay attention to the recovery, deeper and deeper into the deficit. I'm going to be losing more weight. My leverages are going to shift, less body fat on you. Might not be as resilient or as pliable. I'm okay if I have to, toss those movements out altogether. But for now, I like doing them. Upper body, hit that twice per week. Same thing with lower body, try to hit it twice per week. But I can't do more than 1 pressing movement per session. My right shoulder, it's been bugging me a little bit. Chronically has bugged me over the years. I think a lot of it has to do with my past employment, working at an auto plant, a lot of repetitive use. I'm getting deeper into my training years. It does bug me a little bit more frequently. So 1 pressing movement is all I can do. So on 1 upper body session, I do behind the neck press. I know some people say, hey, that's a taboo exercise. But for me, it works out pretty well. As long as I don't go too deep on the range of motion, like if I just let the bar go down to ear level, I have no issue whatsoever. And as long as I don't let the loading get too high, so I try to keep my reps 10 and above. And that keeps me relatively safe and it keeps me pretty comfortable. And as far as my chest work on that particular session, I'll just do a pec deck and not doing another pressing movement. So a pec deck, that feels pretty good. Back work, kind of same thing with the pressing. Like if I do more than one pulling movement, it's just too much for me. I have a harder time recovering, and I know it seems kind of weird that, hey, this guy's only doing one pressing movement, one pulling movement. It's not a lot of volume. I will say that I do train heavy as I can comfortably. You know, I do push myself as far as like training and lifting heavy. And as far as reps in reserve, you know, I do tend to take it probably a little bit closer to failure than I am, let's say, further away from failure. So I know with the rep range that I'm working in, my reps in reserve target, where it's at, you know, being a little bit more on the intense side, I know I'm bringing a lot of muscle fiber to the party. So I know I'm signaling to my muscle, hey, I need you. You're not going anywhere. You need to stick around because there's going to be more of this to come. So as long as work is good quality and there's plenty of effort there, then I'm going to be getting plenty of stimulus. So I just, in a sense, try to think of my programming as a little more auto-regulated, hitting the principles, listening to my body, my recovery abilities, and not trying to get too far ahead of myself. I think a lot of us, sometimes we get ourselves into hot water. That maybe insecurity guide us a little bit. And usually that means we do a little too much because we fear we're going to either lose muscle or we're not going to progress at the rate that we think we should be progressing at. And sometimes we just bite off more than we can chew, and the recovery isn't all that great. I have to be very aware of the recovery, and I have to be very mature when it comes to my training and you know, being disciplined. You have discipline to train hard and to make sure you are in fact training, like you're not missing out on days and things like that. But you also have to be disciplined, you know, knowing when maybe it's time not to train, like maybe you need an extra recovery day in there because of fatigue, or hey, I need to back off the loads, or I need to, you know, switch out some exercises, go to less invasive exercises, increase rep ranges, maybe stay further away from failure, maybe dropping a set off an exercise. Again, when you have 35 years of experience, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I have a lot more clarity with my decision making. And in my opinion, what makes an advanced bodybuilder is not necessarily the programming itself. It's more about how you adjust the programming based on your real-time experience. So when people ask me questions about my volume, the frequency, just, you know, my training in general, I have to describe the context, what I'm experiencing, and break down why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So, you know, if you're just someone who's looking on the outside without, let's say, understanding or knowing the context, it's easy to say, hey, this dude's doing a Smith behind the neck press, you know, hey, that's bad for you, because a lot of people on YouTube or the general consensus is that's a bad exercise. But it really comes down to the individual and the context. So that's why these videos, I try to give as much context as I can. But anyways, I'm starting to probably ramble a little too much. So I'm going to leave it here. I want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. And of course, you know, train smart, of course, train hard, but enjoy yourself, enjoy the holidays, treat each other well. And I will talk to you guys more than likely in 2022.
Yeah, spoon, bring the spoon. If you got forks, bring the forks. I got,
You got the cups?
Whatever you got. That's what, whatever you got.
Yeah, we actually